So Matthew, last time we talked a bit about the name Cepheus and how the logo came about, but I think it's time we talked a little bit more about Project Cepheus itself. What is it?
So, Project Cepheus. It's the system Space Council is developing, and what it does is it harmonises data for universities, and then it provides them with a really sophisticated benchmarking tool. So what that allows them to do is to really know their past and current operating state, and then model out scenarios for the future so they can make informed decisions about their facilities and operations and how they meet the needs of learning and teaching.
So it's another system. Now, universities, they have a lot of systems. So why do they need another one?
Well, the reason is that they do have a lot of systems. They have systems for timetabling and for space management and for finance and student enrolments and so on. The problem is that all of those systems are on different platforms. They generally don't talk to each other. So they often have data that is describing the same things but slightly differently. And so that means depending on where you sit in the university, you can have quite a different view of what's actually going on. So what Cepheus does, rather than trying to replace all of those systems, which you do see that happen in other industries, but it's a highly risky prospect and probably not one that universities want to take on, where they just wipe out all their systems and bring in something like SAP or some bespoke Oracle solution. That's probably not going to happen. So Cepheus sits in between the gaps of all of these other systems, joining them all together or joining the data from them all together in a way that can present a single story about the facilities the university's got, the students that are using them, the way they're being used, the cost of operating them, and so on. So that's the first step of it, to join all the data together. But once you've done that across a number of universities, then those harmonised databases can then be used to benchmark between universities. So they can then look at sort of state of the art, if you like, of the way they operate compared to other institutions, and they can get really specific about the sort of benchmarking they're doing. So they can get down to the for example, the space use per discipline per student, for example, or the space cost per discipline per student. They can get down to that sort of specificity, which they just don't have access to with any existing benchmarking tools.
Right. So you can see this gap this data management gap that Cepheus fills, but now it's 2020. COVID-19, universities are strained at the moment. We know that. So what do you think about the timing? Don't you think universities have enough on their plate at the moment with COVID-19 to take on another system?
They've got a lot on their plates, there's no doubt. The thing is that you need a system like Cepheus to help adapt to change. That's what it's about. So if you go back 12 months ago, the form of change that a lot of universities were facing was student growth and how to deal with student growth. Now there's been a switch flipped, and now they're perhaps more concerned with students that aren't going to be there and how do they manage that change. But there's only really a couple of levers that the universities have got, in particular when it comes to controlling costs. And one of those levers, obviously, is staffing, and they're all looking at staffing and talking about making staff redundant and so on. Another major lever is facilities. So, if you look across the universities in Australia, on average, they have about $1 billion to $1.5 billion of assets, and if you combine all that together across the country, that means there's something like $50 billion worth of building assets tied up in universities, and most of that's public. That's public money. So if you then look at the cost to operate all of those facilities, there's really two parts of it. One is the cost of having it, and that's sort of represented by depreciation. That comes to something like $1.5 billion a year. So if these facilities are sitting there not being beneficially used, then the cost to the industry, the cost to society is about $1.5 billion a year. If they are operating them, then that cost increases to about $5 billion a year. So if they're operating facilities they don't need to operate, then there's this sort of $5 billion a year cost. So the opportunity to respond to COVID, respond to the changing funding arrangements from the federal government, the opportunity in the way facilities are used is a big one, and it needs to be taken advantage of. And so that's what Cepheus is allowing universities to do now, is to find solutions to the immediate challenges and include facilities management as an important part of those solutions.
Right. And why Space Counts? Why is Space Counts taking this challenge on?
So Space Counts was set up about 5 years ago. We come from university, so we understand the sorts of challenges that universities have in terms of the way they operate, the sort of idiosyncrasies of their structures, their need to cater to students' needs, to give priority to the running of the semesters over other development and other priorities. So we understand all of those aspects of universities, having come out of universities ourselves as space managers and timetablers and so on. But the other thing is that Space Counts has been solving these problems for universities for the last 5 years. So we've been getting the data, we've developed algorithms and various techniques to join the data together to present it in a meaningful way that can be understood against perhaps more standardised methods than have existed in the past. So we've got a lot of the IP already exists, and so that's why we came up with this idea to combine that all together and systematise it, and then roll it out to universities to use.
So it's a big task ahead, and what about the team required to deliver such a system and support that?
Yeah, so we've now got ourselves. So we have the management expertise, the understanding of the industry. We also have Gordon Lindsay on board, who's a very experienced software architect. We also have software engineers who we've been using over the last number of years, and so we have a team ready to go. And we have access to additional resources to build up more development and analysis capability as the project progresses. And
perhaps talk about the next steps then for Project Cepheus. What's next?
Yep. So the immediate thing we're doing is we're going out to all of the facilities, space managers in all of the universities in our region. We're telling them about Cepheus, and we're inviting them to visit our landing page where they can do a survey. We want to sort of collect information from the various potential stakeholders about the way they would use and interact with Cepheus, and what that'll do is inform the priorities of the functionality that we develop in the system. So then by the end of this year, early 2021, we'll start developing the MVP, the minimum viable product. So the idea is that by the end of 2021, early 2022, we're rolling out the first version of the system. And so what we need is for universities to get involved and As I said, go to the landing page. It's www.projectcepheus.com. They can register their interest. They can do the survey. And then once they've done that, we'll follow up with all of those that are able to keep involved and with information and also some interviews with some of the key players to get more of their input and have them help shape what the project's going to look like.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you, Matthew. I think that gives us a lot more insight into what Project Cepheus is, and there's more to come.
Thanks, Mark.